Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Grenada's spanking new and able Prime Minister has vowed to end nepotism in the public service. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Monday, 4th July 2022. Details when we return.
The hurricane season is now upon us, so we as Caribbean people need to remember to think safety and be prepared. Avoid venturing outside during a storm or hurricane, especially if there are strong winds. Rooftops and other debris are often blown about and can cause great damage.
Welcome back. Grenada's Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, who recently led his National Democratic Congress NDC organization to a crushing defeat of the long-standing Keith Mitchell new National Party administration, and who has campaigned on promises to clean up the governmental structures, has reiterated his plan to put an end to nepotism in the public service.
Particularly as it relates to the government service in all aspects, whether it be police, teachers, nurses, doctors, the cooks at our schools. We need to run our country based on merit, based on hard work, based on the desire and the willingness to overcome and to find solutions to the challenges that face us. We will not move forward or prosper as a people if the sole basis for job selection, for promotion, for the award of contracts is party loyalty or personal loyalty. If we continue with this approach, we will be doing ourselves and the several generations of Grenadians to come a huge disfavor. And so under my leadership, I intend to break that vicious cycle of nepotism.
Countries within the Pan American Health Organization's family are advised to prepare their health systems to address the long-term impacts of post-COVID conditions, commonly called long COVID. Details in this Barbados Today news item.
The appeal from a director of the Pan American Health Organization, Dr. Caricia Etienne, who pointed out that those with pre-existing conditions are particularly at risk of post-COVID conditions.
Many patients, whether they experience mild, severe, or critical COVID-19, continue to experience COVID-like symptoms for 3 months or more after their initial infection. These are the people with post-COVID condition, also referred to as long COVID. Some studies have estimated that 10 to 20% of people who had COVID may develop this post-COVID conditions. Considering the millions of confirmed COVID-19 cases worldwide, hundreds of thousands of people may well be affected. This is a particularly important problem for the Americas, where we have reported over 161 million COVID-19 cases over the past 2 years. It is difficult to be precise about how many people are affected, since cases of post-COVID condition are not always officially reported.
She explained that post-COVID conditions can be extremely debilitating.
But we know that people who had underlying health conditions, people who did not get vaccinated against COVID-19, people with other risk factors such as asthma, and those who smoke or vape are particularly at risk for this condition. We also know that people that had COVID once and recovered may still develop post-COVID condition if they are infected again. The post-COVID condition can be extremely debilitating. The most common symptom is severe and persistent fatigue. People may also experience shortness of breath, loss of taste and smell, and other respiratory, cognitive, and sensory symptoms. All of this can impact a person's mental health and influence important aspects of their personal and professional lives, including the ability to relate with the environment and the people around them.
The University of the West Indies Five Islands campus in Antigua and Barbuda has received a donation of audio-visual equipment and smart boards from the Embassy of the People's Republic of China. ABS's Cherilyn Beezer reports.
Gratitude was expressed at a recognition ceremony.
We are exceptionally grateful for the gift from the People's Republic of China and enable us to continue to bridge that divide in terms of offering tertiary education to the people of this region.
Pro Vice Chancellor and Principal, Professor Denzel Williams, said the donation marks an important partnership with the campus's Chinese counterpart that will only lead to greater success. China's ambassador to Antigua and Barbuda, Zhang Yangling, congratulated the university on providing opportunities to students of various backgrounds.
Along the journey where the UWI Five Islands campus strives to achieve its mission, I'm glad that China always been able to provide the necessary support.
She congratulated the UWI on the completion of its audiovisual unit. Meanwhile, Communications Technology Minister Honorable Melford Nicholas said the Chinese were instrumental in upgrading the information technology network at the campus.
At the time when we were doing implementation as well, of course, COVID came up, and that had a certain impact on the available resources that the government could have. And so we besieged our friends, the Chinese, to come to the able assistance, and they really accepted. And so here we are.
Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education and Sports, Rosa Greenaway, also expressed gratitude. The partnership between the UWI Five Islands campus and China spans the original construction of the edifice, laying the infrastructure for the audiovisual equipment and smartboards, and the Confucius Institute. Cherilyn Beezer reporting for ABS News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
Barbados has the capacity to fulfill its obligations to the IMF. This, according to Prime Minister Mia Mottley, who dismissed concerns raised over Barbados' ability to repay IMF debt in a 7-year period.
Mottley suggested that her critics were using the total $928 million to be repaid to excite and was speaking without context. The Prime Minister made the comments as she addressed the launch of selected papers and speeches of Alistair McIntyre at the Errol Barrow Centre for Creative Imagination last night.
More and more, as I read sometimes in newspapers, I wonder whether people have lost perspective and lost context. For to hear that $900 million from an IMF program is something that will cripple a country when that constitutes a mere 6.4% of its debt, and at no stage will garnish more than 4% of the revenues in servicing the debt, tells me that that figure has been used to excite persons without context. Because if context was placed, then you would realize that that amount is not only one of the smallest amounts, but that the capacity to service the debt is more than manageable. And that thirdly, if you look at it from the perspective that the debt was used to be able to secure from buses to transport people home near and far, to garbage trucks, to equipment to deal with roads, to a whole range of things, then you have context and perspective.
Guyanese-born regional jurist and sitting appeals court judge in the OECS, Louise Blenman, has been nominated by Belizean Prime Minister to become Belize's Chief Justice. More in this News Source Guyana report with Gordon Mosley.
Last week, the Belizean Prime Minister initiated a consultation process with the opposition leader of Belize on the appointment of a new Chief Justice, recommending Justice Blenman for the post. Once confirmed, Justice Blenman will become the first substantive female Chief Justice of Belize. Her nomination by the Belizean Prime Minister followed the recommendation of a panel that interviewed the 8 applicants for the position. Justice Blenman emerged from the interviews as the best suited for the job, and the recommendation was made to the country's Prime Minister. The interviewing panel was made up of senior members of the Bar and the Bar Association of Belize. Justice Louise Esther Blenman graduated from the University of the West Indies in 1986 with a Bachelor of Laws degree with upper second-class honors. She later obtained a legal education certificate from the Ewing Law School in Trinidad in 1988 and was called to the bar in Guyana the same year. She also completed and obtained a Master of Law degree with merit from the University of London and has served in a variety of senior legal and judicial positions in the region in St. Scotia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Antigua and Barbuda, and Anguilla. Justice Blenman currently serves as a Justice of Appeal of the Eastern Caribbean Court, which serves 9 states and territories. She served as a High Court judge for 9 years and a Justice of Appeal for 10 years in the region. It was also noted that Justice Blenman is renowned for her prolific judgment writing, many of which have been affirmed by the Privy Council. Once a consultation process between the Prime Minister and the opposition leader is completed, the Prime Minister will have to advise the Governor-General of Belize on the appointment of the new Chief Justice.
Trinidad and Tobago's Director of Public Prosecutions, Roger Gaspard, says despite the Privy Council's ruling in the Piarco No. 1, it's not necessarily the end for the accused. Overshitawari Rupnarayan of TV6 News reports.
Director of Public Prosecutions Roger Gaspard is considering how to advise the state to proceed as it relates to the Piarco Airport project corruption matter, locally touted as the Piarco No. 1 trial. The accused Brian Quaitung, Ishwar Galbaran Singh, Amrit Maharaj, John Henry Smith, Northern Construction Limited, Maritime General Insurance Company Limited, Fidelity Finance and Leasing Company, Russell Huggins, Renee Pay, Barbara Gomes, and Steve Ferguson were in 2008 committed to stand trial for serious and complex fraud allegations. Chief Magistrate Sherman McNichols was the man to make that decision in 2008 following the preliminary inquiry. But a Privy Council ruling days ago may have derailed that trial. The Privy Council quashed the Chief Magistrate's committal order over what it said was the late Chief Magistrate's apparent bias. The law lords described his conduct as reprehensible, saying an observer would agree the late Chief Magistrate was hopelessly compromised, being beholden to the then Attorney General. But as it relates to the way forward, the DPP notes the prosecution was in no way maliciously or improperly brought, nor was his office tainted by the apparent bias which afflicted the former Chief Magistrate. In a statement, Gaspard says the Judicial Committee did not discuss the charges against the accused. Accordingly, he finds the evidentiary foundation unbesmirched and intact. The DPP, however, could not proffer an indictment against the accused persons in order to bring them to trial. But he says that's not the end of the road for the accused, as Gaspard points to 2 options. 1, a new preliminary inquiry, or 2, a voluntary bill of indictment, which will, in essence, bypass the preliminary inquiry stage in cases which involve serious or complex fraud. A decision, he says, can only follow after quote-unquote mature consideration of the quality of the evidence. Several items, he says, up for consideration are public interest factors, including the age of the matter, the alleged abuse of citizens' trust, the prevalence of white-collar crimes, the enormity and financial consequences of the alleged fraud, the cost incurred by the state to date, prospective costs, a consideration of society's abhorrence for serious and complex white-collar crime, the need to demonstrate to and assure the public the state is committed to trying within this jurisdiction persons who are alleged to have practiced acts of serious fraud on the citizenry, the need to act consistently with the rule of law, the absolute necessity for a fair trial and due process. DPP Gaspard restated his public position that taking Piarco No. 1 to trial would have been oppressive, if not legally nettlesome. Urvashi Tiwari Rupnarayan, TV6 News.
Hubbard's Motor Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grenada, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's. Quality service, affordable prices.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.